Hey guys, it's Marisol with Soul Stitchery, and today is Wednesday, so that means another episode of One Quilt from start to finish. I hope you've been following along. I hope you've gotten something useful out of the few episodes we've had already. I feel a little bit like a newscaster way down here behind the table, but I wanted to make it so that I could show you the whole, as much of the mat as I possibly could. I'm kind of an amateur videographer here, so don't hold it against me if there's a lot of kind of bleh, because really it's about the quilting, right? Let's be fair. So today we're going to talk a little bit about prepping the fabric, cutting the fabric. If you just started quilting, that I'm probably a very by quilting standards, I'm a newer quilter. I've only been quilting for, I don't know, maybe 6 years now. So that's kind of new by quilter standards. If you are like me and kind of new, I still get that weird feeling just before I start with the rotary cutter and then I'll check again. And that might be just my compulsion, right? But I feel like it's a new quilter thing. You're like, okay, 5 of these 5.5 inch squares. Okay. And you get ready to make that first cut. And it's like, five. Okay, yes. And then which is good. That's why the saying happens, measure twice, cut once, right? Okay. So for those of you who have not followed along, super quick recap. We are working on this guy right here, the shipwrecked quilt. It is a quilt that you can find at my shop, soulstitchery.com. It is by the Sweet Tea Pattern Company. My friend Jennifer McClanahan over there. Hey, Jen, again. She makes these fabulous patterns that have big spaces for all those big prints like Tula and Kaffe and all those guys. So we're using her shipwrecked pattern. And the deal is that my videos have covered, which pattern do I pick? Because I had like 3 or 4 to choose from, to what's my background fabric, and then what's my features going to be, and where are my borders coming from. So we've gone through all of that process. So now we have picked our fabrics. We have picked our contrasting and complementary borders. We have picked our background fabric. We've got everything all set. Last week, what I did was, as I cut look at this pretty. I have to stop every time. It's like so cute. So I pressed and used, where is it? Where's my stuff? Well, here it is. So I pressed them all and I used Best Press on my fabric for my quilts. It is not really a super starchy starch. I'm pretty sure it is starch, but whatever it does, it just gives some body to the fabric, but not that starchy feeling. So you still have some movement in it, but it gives it a little bit of body, right? So I did that for all of the fat quarters that I cut. And then what I do, this is just me, it's a tip that I learned from some quilter somewhere long ago, is I make a copy of the pattern, even though I own the pattern, right? I make a copy of it so I can mark it all up. And that way my original pattern kind of stays original, because I don't know, that's just the thing that I do. I don't like to write all over it. Plus I like to see it nice and open. So I highlighted the column for the size that I'm making, and I highlighted all of the cuts for each of the types of fabric that I'm going to use in this particular quilt. The only thing I am not going to cut ahead of time is the binding or the backing. I have been known, and there's some of you out there I know that are just like me, that have been known to throw a border or two on their quilt. I'm a big border person. What about you? Do you like the borders? Do you not like the borders? I did also make Jennifer McClanahan's Spinning Crazy quilt. That's available in a kit form online right now at soulstitchery.com. And I did not put any borders on it. I just made it just the way it was, because I didn't want to like offend Jen by changing her pattern. But I do like to stick a border on things. And this pattern happens to be one that I think, that I think a border wouldn't hurt it. Like, it would look really pretty with a border, except that, the half diamonds, like, I don't know yet. We'll see, because we're going to do this from start to finish. Okay. So I highlight each type of fabric that I have selected for the quilt and what I have to cut and subcut for those particular fabrics. Now, I will say this, even though I've been quilting for 5, 6 years now, 6, 7 years, um, I learned the hard way that I should cut one block worth of fabric, make that block up completely from start to finish. And then depending on my comfort level with the block, was it easy to put together? Are there lots of fiddly parts? Then I may chain piece the rest of them and put them together that way. Or I may stick to that one block at a time kind of thing. So my tip to you, if you're a beginning quilter, make one block, cut each part of that block separately and put that block together completely from start to finish before you move on to the next block, or before you decide to pre-cut all of the fabric and chain piece all of the pieces. This is experience speaking. For those of you that are familiar with Elizabeth Hartman's Fancy Forest pattern, I made that quilt for my very first grandson, Finley. Hi, Finley. Gam Gam loves you very, very much. And so that particular pattern has lots of little teeny tiny pieces. So I thought, oh, this can be great. I'm going to cut each animal and shape. I'm going to pre-cut all the pieces and put them in Ziploc bags. And then I'll have all the foxes in one bag and all the bunnies in another bag and so on. And what happened was I miscut a few things. It was one of my very first few quilts. I think it maybe was my third quilt. And back then I used to starch the heck out of stuff. And so it just wasn't a good idea. From that quilt, I learned, make a block, figure it out, go through all the obstacles and the challenges with one of the blocks, if all the blocks are the same or similar. And then you can move on to the next block because you'll have a little bit more of a comfort level with how the pattern reads and how it flows. So my friends, that's what we're going to do next, is we're going to fully cut one block. I'm going to show you how I fussy cut, because I do a lot of that. I do English paper piecing quite a bit myself personally. And so I love to fussy cut fabric. So we'll talk about that a little bit. A couple of housekeeping things I wanted to go over. So in video number 3, it says episode 3 on it in YouTube. There is a secret at the very end of that video. You should check it out if you like this quilt and all the fabrics in it. Please also, if you have a Facebook account, log into your Facebook, look up Soul Stitchery's Crafty Crew, and just give us a join. It is not a private group. Anyone can join. You can just come on in and the water's great. You know, we're all talking about quilting and sewing. That's a great place to see notifications or little snippets of the videos that I'm going to post on this particular quilt. And then also, you know, check out my TikTok. I have a TikTok. It's, I think it's Quilt Gal, but I don't remember exactly. There's always links to my TikTok on Soul Stitchery's Crafty Crew Facebook group. So if you join that group, you'll get links to all the TikTok stuff that I put out as well. And great surprise, I have recently, because I've already picked out all the fabrics in the quilt, I have kitted both the throw size and the size that I'm making, which is the full/double, which is more like a queen size quilt. So throw size finishes at 65 inches by 60 inches. Full and double finishes at 80 by 90. So I've kitted both of those. They're both available for sale on the shop, in the shop. If you buy them now, you could potentially catch up to where I'm at sewing, and you could fussy cut it probably pretty closely to the way I'm doing it as well. So if that's of interest to you, visit soulstitchery.com. Those kits are available. I just named them Shipwrecked Kit. So if you look that up, you'll see both of the sizes will pop up on the website. Also, if you have any trouble navigating any of that, the phone number on the website also receives text messages. So please feel free to text and we will get back to you within 24 hours. So all of that aside, let's get to the fun part. So my first objective is to look through all of the sizes, determine the size that I'm making, and then I highlight all of my cutting and subcutting that I need to do. The second thing I do is I read carefully through the entire pattern. Some of the time. Most of the time? No, some of the time. Guilty. Oops, sorry. Guilty. I don't always get all the way through. So sometimes what I do is I read through page 1, page 2, page 3. I get a general idea of, oh, okay, that's how she made that block. It's a square and a square, or it's, you know, 4 half square triangles, or it is, you know, pick your poison. So I read through to see how she is doing her thing. So I need to cut some pieces out of my fat quarters, and I need to subcut some other pieces. I'm not going to disclose details of the pattern because, you know, that's not fair. These patterns are copyrighted. If you can't find it on my website, which you should be able to find it, you can always go to sweetteapatternco.com, and Jen has a huge selection of patterns available for sale on her website too. So let's talk about fussy cutting. And we're going to start with this block, not for any particular reason, only because it was the first one on top. So for this particular print, and remember I said I always have like a little something to write with because you just never know, and my brain doesn't always remember things very easily. So I'm kind of low here just so I can look at you guys as I'm talking. But for this particular print, we picked the light citron pure solids. Oh, and luckily it's got the selvage. This is what I love about Art Gallery Fabrics pure solids line. So if you buy it in yardage, if you get a half a yard, you're absolutely going to get part of the selvage. And on the selvage, it'll tell you exactly the SKU number as well as the color name. So super love that. You know, obviously if you get the other end, if you have a fat quarter and you only get the other side, you're not going to see that part. But if you get yardage, you'll definitely see. So you'll know how to pick the next color. And their dye lots are, you know, there's almost no variance in the color. It's amazing. Definitely check it out if you can. If you need solids, it's worth buying a half yard or something of one of the solids just so that you can feel that. And you can see when I say almost no fraying, these fat quarters have been thrown around all over the shop, you know, since last week's video. So I'm here to tell you. All right, so I want to do this color, which means that I would want to use the Chihuahua. But really, if you look, they all have a detail. So the poodle has the citron in her bow there. If you zoom in, you probably can see that. The Rottie, for those of us who love the breed, the Rottweiler has the light citron eyebrows, and he's got the detail under his scruff here. It's that color as well. So almost all of the puppies have that color in them somewhere. I need a 10-inch, 11-inch block. I need a large size block, so I am going to use the poodle because the poodle will give me plenty of space to cut that entire block just perfectly out of that. So how I decide and how I center this is I actually have a light box. So I will flip this fabric on the wrong side up. I will lay it on the light box, and then I will determine the size of the block that I need, and I will mark it. Then I bring it over to the cutting mat and I cut it. So I am going to, for those of you who are new quilters, fussy cutting just means cutting fabric in a particular way to isolate a part of the pattern, a part of the print. And many times we use fussy cutting in things like applique and English paper piecing because we want to focus on that particular part of the print of that particular fabric. Many times we use that pattern to make it an other pattern. So if you isolate, let's say, this little corner of flowers and vines, and you repeat that same little corner each time from the whole entire piece of fabric, and then put them together in a block, you'll see that they come together and form another pattern. So fussy cutting is what we call that. It's any time that you cut in order to isolate a part of the print that you're looking at. So if you wanted just the fire hydrant, sorry, my son is a firefighter. Sorry, Pat. If you wanted to just isolate the fire hydrant, you would fussy cut the hydrant out. And then you could use all of the hydrants from this particular piece of fabric. So we're going to fussy cut on this one. We're going to fussy cut the poodle. And see her bow. I'm going to stand up here so you can see. Her bow is almost exactly this color. So that's going to look super, super great. So I'm going to go grab the light box, sit back down here. I am going to drop my glasses while I'm at it. I'm going to grab the light box. I'm going to plug it in and put this up so you can see how I mark it. In the case that you're going to make this quilt, if you buy that kit, you're going to get a piece of this. So whichever one of these pups you wanted to fussy cut out, you'll be able to see how I did it, and you can copy that if you've never fussy cut anything. I found the light box helps me a lot because my eyesight's not so great. Just dropped my glasses, probably not good now either. And so it helps me to see the pattern or the print through the fabric, and marking also helps me to cut more accurately. So stand by, I'll be right back, and we're going to cut this poodle out. Okay, so I have a light box, and I'm going to just show you how I use it. We decided we're going to isolate that poodle, right? And so basically what I do is I'll flip this fabric over on my light box, turn the light on, and now I know exactly where. It's just easier for me to see where the center is. I know right where the middle is of this particular print. And I want to say it's just above her nose, right between her little eyes. Looks like a little freckle. I just put a little dot with a waterproof or water soluble, not waterproof, water soluble marker, so that when I wash this, it'll come out. But now I know exactly where the center of her head is. So based on the size indicated in the pattern, and I will be cutting the block a little bit bigger because I happen to have a ruler that's just marginally bigger than what the block measurements call for. So I'm going to use this ruler first to trim her perfectly, and then I'll just trim down from there to make sure that it's the size that it needs to be for the pattern. This just makes it a little easier for me to cut the block. So I'm going to go ahead and cut and cut and whoops and cut. And then I'll save these pieces for my English paper piecing. I even could get a smaller block out of maybe one of the other prints, like the fire hydrants. I could use those for a block. I could even use just the crown of the shield thing here, like just that little piece out of each print, and that would make a nice little pattern on something English paper pieced. So this is what these kinds of scraps are for me. I'm going to cut here as well. And I know you're not supposed to ever cut towards yourself or towards your limbs. I hear all of you old quilters out there telling me, and I just say, you know, I'm being super, super careful, I promise. And so, so now I'll trim this up to measure. But look at that. We've got that poodle is right in the center. I'm going to just throw the iron on her real quick. There's a little bit of a crease there I want to get rid of. And I always keep my iron close by. And unfortunately for my poor mat, my poor Martelli mat, I have my Aliso. You can see where it is. But I had it pointing kind of more closer towards the mat. And I guess just the seam from the iron warped the mat. And that makes me sad. So, all right, I'm going to trim this puppy up and get it up to size. And then the next thing we're going to cut is the borders. So bear with me. Let me get this all trimmed up and I'll be right back. Hey guys, so I've trimmed up my block, and there's a couple things I wanted to mention before we move on to the next step. So I talked about marking the center of the block from the reverse side with the light box. And all I did was put my fabric onto that light box. I kind of eyeballed it to see where does the middle look like to me. If you are, you know, a measuring maven, then you measure the size of the block that you have to have, right? And then you can kind of do the math and figure out the dead center. I just kind of eyeballed it. I stuck a mark where I thought that center would be. Now, my ruler is 12 and a half inches. So all I did was lay my ruler on the middle of that. I centered that block right in the middle of the ruler and I just cut around it. So you can see that just prior to this piece of the video, right? And so when I was done though, I had to trim it differently because my block is on point, right? So my square would have been cut out this way. I want to make sure that my block is centered this way. So here's what I did. I folded the block over and I made sure that the crease, the fold, was right on that dot that I marked on the wrong side of the fabric. That's my center, not the fabric folded in half because the block size isn't correct, right? Just that center. I know the size of my block. I was able to divide it evenly into two. And so I made that measurement and cut. Now I fold the block in the other direction and I actually press it because I want to see that fold very, very clearly. I want to know where that halfway point is. And I want to know that that fold falls right on that dot that I marked prior. So that's the halfway point there. I do my measurement in half again and I measure and trim. So now I have a block that measures exactly what the pattern calls for and is centered on the design that I want to feature. So if you want a more clear explanation of this, I will try to write it out and save it in the files tab of the Soul Stitchery Crafty Crew Facebook group. So if you take a look there, I will try to have this file uploaded pretty soon for you so you know exactly how I did this. I always like to have a ruler. I have a couple of different sizes of square ruler. I have a 16.5 inch and a 12.5 inch. And these are the biggest squares that I own. My small piecing, I have the little ones, but the biggest ones I have, the two that I own personally, are the 12.5 and the 16.5. And that's because I do 14.5 inch finished blocks a lot and 10.5 inch finished blocks a lot and 8.5 inch finished blocks a lot. And so I like to have a bigger ruler, trim that block out in a bigger size, and then trim it down. And this is my method for doing that, whether the block is on point or not. It just happens to be on point. I want my quilt to have an upside and a downside. And so here is the way I'm fussy cutting these critters out of those prints. So moving swiftly on, the next part of this block is to cut some border fabric. So let's see what we've got to cut here. So from the citron, I'm going to make a few cuts and then we will be back to start sewing those pieces together. Thank you so much for sticking around. I will be cutting and then we will actually be sewing. Okay, guys, here's what I think we'll do. Since I went over the fussy cutting today, and since it's a little bit more challenging than what I think a beginner quilter could do easily, I am going to not move on to the sewing piece this episode. What we'll do is I'll fussy cut a couple more. I'm going to videotape how I go through that process so that you guys can kind of watch the step by step. And I will post that along with this video so that you can see how that gets done. So we're going to fussy cut a couple more blocks, a couple more cute puppies and some fish and some bunnies. And I will show you how I go through that process. I did do the border for this and I'm super excited about how that's going to look. I think it's going to be really pretty. So thank you as always for joining in. Thanks for following along. I am so grateful for your support. I hope that you're getting something fun and exciting out of this video. I know I love feeling like there's people out there that are watching because you know who you are. People have been commenting and saying things and enjoying the video content, and I am so, so grateful for you. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you again next Wednesday, and thanks again for joining Soul Stitchery for one quilt from start to finish.